Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Counting on Law. District Court judges rarely ever make it to judgeship in the High Court. Even rarer so, or perhaps inexistent, is their presence in the Supreme Court. A recent story on ThePrint unpacked this with anecdotal accounts. We pull up data from major high courts across the country to show how more than 70% of the High Court composition is through members directly elevated from the bar. Even more alarmingly, the age on elevation for those elevated from the bar hovers around their late 40s, while the age on elevation for members elevated from judicial services is in their mid 50s. This 5-year gap speaks volumes. Resultantly, members of the judicial services elevated into the upper judiciary rarely ever make it to the Supreme Court. And it is telling that among the 33 judges of the Supreme Court today, not one person has had experience as a district court judge in the past. But so what, you may ask? What is the issue that this brings about? We believe that there are 3 serious concerns because of this disparity. Number 1, you cannot coach if you haven't played the game. High Court judges are appointed as administrative judges to each district in almost all the states. Take, for example, the state of Uttar Pradesh, which has 66 judicial districts. 66 judges of the Allahabad High Court are appointed as administrative judges to each of these judicial districts. Now, only 10 among them have had prior experience as a district court judge. The remaining 85% have not seen a day in the court as a sitting judge of these district courts. Now, you might very well argue, these judges could have practiced as lawyers in front of these trial courts during their days of practice, and that is true. However, elevation favors those who have visibility, and to eventually be elevated and attain that visibility, most ambitious lawyers practice in and around capital cities where these high courts are housed, or in Delhi where the Supreme Court is housed. So the ordinary lawyer who takes the ordinary matter of the average person to a lower court does not feature in this matrix of elevation at all. And this disparity is writ large in how the people who ultimately end up supervising the district court judges would have not had a single day's practice in a district court before elevation. Problem number 2, the mandatory minimum service requirement of 2 to 3 years before induction into the judicial services further exacerbates this gap. As ex-judge and lawyer advocate Bharat Shug makes note, this policy ends up having an exclusionary effect. Most junior lawyers in district courts across the country are paid in the order of rupees 10,000 or lesser, if at all they are paid anything. To survive with such harsh remunerative conditions and still practice for 2 to 3 years, you must have bare minimum privilege. Now, those that continue to practice despite these hardships to eventually enter the judicial services are doubly disadvantaged because of this system. Already the gap of 5 years exists in the median age between those elevated from the bar and from judicial services. Now, added to that, this prior requirement of 3 years means that this gap in the future will increase to 7 or perhaps 8 years. And so resultantly, this system doubly disadvantages everyone. On one hand, the underprivileged cannot access the system because of this mandatory requirement. On the other, those that do persevere through this hardship and enter into the system get an entry point into the higher judiciary much later in life, and it rewards far too little to the ambitious and the bright. Problem number 3, this causes a power imbalance between the bench in the lower judiciary and the bar. Most of the High Court judges, being elevated from the bar, continue to have professional and social circles from the bar. The presumption within the 4 walls of the courtroom is such that however mighty you are as a litigant, as the governor or its lawyers, you bow down in front of the judicial office in reverence for the rule of law that the judicial officer propounds. The reality, however, is much far removed. The lawyer who comes in front of them today seeking relief that they may turn down might turn out to be a supervising judge tomorrow. Now, this is not to say that these district judges are not acting independently or do not have a steadfast commitment to their oath of office. They very well do. But as a system, we put them in a precarious position where they have to compute complex political calculus before they make every move, especially ones that are adverse to these star-studded lawyers who may tomorrow become designated seniors or perhaps even be more likely than themselves elevated to the bench. So having laid down these 3 problems, what are the solutions that we can think about? Solutions such as the National Judicial Appointments Commission are politically charged and carry with themselves a whole other baggage of demerits. Within the present self-selecting system that seems to advantage the privileged, there are a few things that we can do to make the system overall better. Firstly, instead of the mandatory minimum practice that is now in force, we can find a creative workaround in the Supreme Court's recent report on law researchers for district court judges. We know that the Law Researcher cum Clerkship program has worked extremely well for the Supreme Court and for High Court judges, with these young law researchers providing very good research and summaries to the judges. These young, fresh graduates shall be permitted to write the district judiciary exam, and instead of immediate induction into the bench, they may be, on a rotation and probationary basis, appointed through the breadth of the entire district court system, where they have two advantages. One, they are meaningfully immersed in the process, seeing practice day by day. And two, they see in close proximity the working of a judicial mind, helping the judge make accurate decisions. And this is far better than a namesake practice requirement, wherein a certificate of practice suffices as the proof, and this does not exclude anyone. So it has both inclusive effect and brings within itself competence in the form of actual meaningful immersion. Chief Justices, including ex-Chief Justice Dhananjaya Chandrachud, have spoken about how the district judiciary is not subordinate or inferior to any other form of judiciary. A good way perhaps to demonstrate this in practice is to mandate that members of the bar who are elevated and appointed to high courts must serve at least 2 years in the district judiciary before their final appointment to the high courts. Now, this is advantageous on two grounds. One, it intrinsically reduces the age gap between those elevated from the bar and those elevated from services, because you'd be spending 2 years in district courts before your appointment to the high court. And two, it ensures that only those who have played in the dirt end up coaching the ones that play today. Thank you.